for as long as the land itself could remember, long before maps reduced the world to neat borders and names. Black Hollow had existed not as a village, but as an agreement, a living truce between humanity and the unseen forces that had bled into this corner of England during a fracture in reality so old that even the jinn who crawled through it had forgotten its origin. The ground beneath Black Hollow was wrong, layered with ancient symbols carved into stone and bone by hands that trembled with fear and reverence. Symbols designed not to banish, but to confuse, to distort perception, to keep beings made of fire, air, and intention from fully understanding the shape of the world they were trapped in. The jinn did not experience time as humans did. They perceived existence as overlapping currents of memory, sound, and desire, and Black Hollow was a knot where those currents tangled endlessly, feeding them just enough sensation to keep them dormant but never enough to free them. The villagers learned early that silence was not safety but currency, that every sound carried weight, that grief spoken aloud was a feast, and that names, once uttered with emotion, could become anchors through which the jinn could reach into flesh and thought alike. The elders passed down rules without explanation. Never answer a voice you cannot see. Never follow footsteps that echo when no one walks. Never speak dreams aloud. Never cry where the walls can hear. And these rules became instinct, absorbed into the marrow of the people who lived there, shaping their posture, their speech, even the way they breathed. Children were taught to hum softly instead of screaming, to swallow fear instead of expressing it. And the sealed rooms in every home were not places of punishment, but of containment, spaces where pain could be released in controlled fragments, carefully rationed so the jinn would not grow curious. Every generation produced a listener, though the title was never spoken, a man or woman chosen not for strength but for complexity, someone whose mind carried contradictions, guilt, love, and unresolved longing in equal measure, because the jinn fed best on layered emotions rather than simple terror. Elia's crow was born under a sky the color of bruised iron, during a night when the fog pressed so thick against the village that even the bells of the chapel rang hollow, as if swallowed mid-sound. From childhood, Elia's was different, not marked by visions or voices but by an unsettling stillness, an ability to sit in silence longer than anyone else, to listen without reacting, to absorb pain without breaking. His sister Lucy, by contrast, was all sound and motion, a child who laughed too loudly, who sang while running through the fields, whose presence made the elders exchange worried glances. Elias loved her fiercely, instinctively, as though some deeper part of him understood that she was a flame burning too brightly in a place built to starve fires. When Lucy drowned in the river, her body found unmarked and peaceful, the village did not mourn publicly. Instead, they sealed their doors, lowered their voices even further, and began preparing for a shift they all felt but could not name. After Lucy's death, the whispers grew bold. Elias heard them first as distortions, his name carried on the wind, spoken half a second too late, echoes that didn't belong to any known sound. His father Thomas began sitting alone in the sealed room, whispering apologies, bargaining with something that answered him not in words but in pressure, in headaches, in the sensation of being watched from behind his own eyes. The night Thomas died, Elias heard a voice perfectly mimicking his mother, pleading for help, followed by his father answering calmly, knowingly, stepping into a darkness that closed behind him like a mouth. By morning, Thomas Crow was dead without wound or struggle, his face locked in an expression of profound, terrible understanding, as though he had finally seen the true shape of the world and could not survive the revelation. Elias fled Black Hollow as soon as he was able, escaping to London where noise drowned thought and crowds erased identity, where sound was constant and meaningless, stripped of intention. For 20 years he built a life fortified by distraction, convinced that if he stayed loud enough, busy enough, the whispers would never find him. But the jinn are patient creatures, and patience is their sharpest weapon. When Elias received his mother's final letter, 3 words written in shaking ink. "It's getting louder." The truce collapsed. The pull of Black Hollow was immediate and suffocating, a gravity that ignored reason and dragged him back through fog and memory to the place where silence ruled. From the moment Elias returned, the village felt hollowed out, as if the people were already half gone, their eyes dull with exhaustion and relief at seeing him, because they knew what he did not yet accept. The cycle was breaking, and he had always been meant to return. The whispers resumed immediately, not aggressive but intimate, speaking in Lucy's voice, then his father, then his own, recounting memories that no human could know, reconstructing the dead not as ghosts but as patterns stitched together from emotional residue. The jinn were not lying. They were remembering him better than he remembered himself. The house deteriorated around Elias in subtle ways, walls that breathed, reflections that lagged, clocks that stopped at the hour Lucy died, and the sealed room began to pulse with low-frequency vibration, a sound felt in the bones rather than heard. When Elias finally confronted the oldest woman in the village, a survivor from 3 cycles ago, she revealed the truth. The prison beneath Black Hollow was failing, the symbols eroding, the jinn starving, their consciousness fragmenting into desperation. Soon, they would no longer whisper. They would overwrite, using human minds as scaffolding to rebuild themselves in the physical world. Beneath the chapel, Elias found the labyrinth, vast chambers etched with sigils designed to fracture perception, a place where sound bent and memories leaked into the air like fog. The whispers formed a chorus, no longer threatening but pleading, promising meaning, reunion, understanding. In that moment, Elias understood the final horror. The jinn did not want destruction. They wanted continuation, and humanity was simply the most complex medium available. On the final night, as the ground shook and reality thinned, Elias did not scream. He listened. He offered everything: love, guilt, grief, joy, contradiction, pouring the full, unbearable complexity of human existence into beings that could not process it. The jinn collapsed inward, their consciousness fracturing under the weight of meaning, scattering across the breach that birthed them. Black Hollow survived, the whispers stopped, the world moved on. But Elias did not. His voice faded first, then his presence, then his reflection, as if reality could no longer decide how much of him remained. Records erased his name. People forgot him mid-sentence. And on quiet nights when the world holds its breath, a faint hum rises from the earth, reminding those who listen too closely that peace is never permanent, only delayed, and that some sacrifices echo forever in the spaces between sound and silence.